All right, and welcome to Raw Real Politics. This is Beyond the Podium podcast, where we interview candidates, media personalities, and others as we go through this 2024 cycle of this most crucial, important election in our nation's history. Right now, I am very pleased to present to you a candidate from Utah's 1st Congressional District, as I am running for RRC committee man here in my state of the great state of Utah. My name is Ty Jensen. This is Raw Real Politics. Let's get going. My first guest that I'm going to introduce to you right now is Paul Miller. Let's bring Paul up on the screen. Paul, you there? How are you?
Okay, there we go. Sorry, I was muted. How's it going, Ty? I'm doing great.
Good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a very huge benefit to me to get my message out, and thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
No problem. This is Paul Miller. He's running for 1st Congressional District up in the state of Utah, and he is running against the incumbent Blake Miller. How do you feel about your congressional race so far?
Yeah, Blake Moore. I feel great. I've never ran for office before, so this is my first go round. I'm not a politician, and so I think my campaign's going great. Because I don't have anything to compare it to. But yeah, it's been great getting to know all of the delegates and everybody that's come to me with questions and it's one of the beautiful things. Like you never know what to look at as far as politics go, and the delegates and everybody else helps you with that.
Correct. And, as somebody who's running also for Utah's 2nd Congressional District and RNC committeeman, I understand and know exactly where you're coming from. I'm not a politician either. This is my new venture right here at Ron Real. And so I understand where you're coming from. Not being a politician, it's very hard, especially when you go against an incumbent, somebody who's been there for, I think, 2 cycles now.
Yeah.
He comes off as the Liz Cheney type, to where you come off more as an America First candidate. How do you perceive that up in your district?
Yeah, and he really is a Liz Cheney Republican, because he voted for her in conference leadership. He tried to get her to come and fundraise for him 2 years ago when he was running against Andrew Badger, and he voted for the January 6th committee and all of that jazz. So yeah, he is very much so a Liz Cheney Republican. And I hear that when I'm at the meet and greet events and out campaigning, and the Republicans in Utah don't like that too much. And so I think that convention's going to be there's going to be a real strong vote at convention. We're going to see the fruits of him leaning that way.
Now, as far as Andrew Badger, and I've known Andrew for a couple of years, I remember him in the 2022 cycle. Have you reached out to him? Have you talked to him at all during your campaign and your run?
I so I've tried to reach out to him a little bit. I have talked to his campaign manager, and what went well with his campaign, and kind of what they thought they could have done better, and and his campaign manager kind of had the same message that a lot of the constituents had, and some of the advice that I've gotten, which is make sure that you know where he's voted, and that couldn't have been any more true. Like, if you look at where Blake Moore has voted, like it is absurd that he represents like a deep red state. And so yeah, it's unacceptable.
Well, especially with District 1, because District 1, just like District 2, is so heavily red. You can maybe go not quite red for CD3. CD4 is kind of that pinkish, almost purplish type of zone. But when it comes to CD1, yours is absolutely red, just like CD2. And so this is a big old challenge. But right now, we're going to start the kickoff with your campaign here tonight on Wrong Reel with Beyond the Podium. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes to sit here and give us your best intro. Paul,
Okay.
take it away.
So I am Paul Miller. I am an electrician by profession. I am not a politician. I do not have any ties to any special interest groups or any political affiliations or, any political connections. I am just part of We the People, and and that's how our government should be and how our representatives should be. And I'm just as mad as you are. I am a convention only candidate. So here on Saturday is when our convention is. That determines if I uh, move on or not. Things that I don't like about Blake Moore and things that I would do differently. Well, his father-in-law actually owns and manages all of Hill Air Force Base housing. And if that's not a conflict of interest, I don't know what is. Especially when he used to sit on the Armed Services Committee. And he's participated in insider trading. He has Raytheon stocks, which is also, which is horribly bad when he was on Armed Services Committee. And if you look at his votes, he's always voting for, military spending and Ukraine spending, because Raytheon benefits from that. So he benefits too. And that's wrong. And something else, another thing that's negative with him is when he votes for a military spending bill, he actually gets paid for his vote. So he receives about 50 grand from a military subcontractor in Clearfield, Utah. This company is called ES3. They're an engineering firm, and they deal with F-16 landing gear and stuff like that. And so when he votes for a military spending bill, this company dumps like 50 grand into his campaign account. And this is all trackable on the fec.gov website, which is where I found it. So, and I have the receipts on my website, which is www.pm4utah.com. And that's FOR. And so that I think that's unacceptable. We need to get it out of Washington D.C. and out of Congress. I don't think that our congressmen should be allowed to trade stocks at all. And so and it's one of the many things that we need to reform what our politicians go by in Washington. And one of the key differences between me and Blake as far as voting goes is the spending bills. Blake's number one issue is the debt and deficit. And if if you look at his votes, he's voted for the last 6 continuing resolutions, and he's voted for almost every single spending bill that's put in front of his face. And it's funny because Blake actually has a debt and deficit task force here in his Ogden office, and his debt and deficit task force even recommended that he not vote for these continuing resolutions, going against his own task force that he put together himself. And so I've told the delegates, no, I'm going to vote no on these spending bills. We need, one single line veto item power. We need time to actually review and debate these spending bills. We need to review and debate each spending bill alone, each appropriations bill alone, and not an omnibus bill or a minibus bill. And so, and these aren't crazy ideas. The Republican House or the Republican conference in the House has already agreed to this. Blake Moore has likely already agreed to this. And what do they do every time? They suspend the rules and they pass these bills. At the last hour, this last omnibus bill, they got, on Thursday at 3 a.m. and they voted for it on Friday at 10:40 a.m. And congressional leadership knows that that's what they need to do to pass these spending bills. And so, and it's not only that, we need to, curb the power back from the federal government. I don't know, is my 2 minutes up?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. And so we need to curb the power of the federal government. So nowhere in Article 2 of the Constitution does it state that the executive branch can unilaterally create laws. And Congress hasn't challenged the bureaus and agencies in the federal government about that. And so, which is why it's important that we pass the REINS Act and we follow the jurisdiction of Article 1, Section 8 in the Constitution, where it lays out the jurisdiction of Congress. And so,
Correct.
and we need to use our leverage as far as these spending bills and other legislation that gets put forward in front of the House to pass protections for our southern border. Because this Congress, they actually, in the House, they passed Secure the Border Act of 2023, which reinforced remain in Mexico, finish the border wall, and a catch and release. And I support that, and that is exactly what we need. And so, but anyways, yeah, those are a lot of what I'm about. I'm also, one last thing, I'm not about compromise. I am so sick of the Republican Party compromising. We have compromised our principles to death. We let the Democrats win every single time, and it's time that we actually put up a fight and get stubborn and say enough is enough. We need to stop this. It's bankrupting our country morally and financially, and so that, like, it needs to stop. And so that is my message.
No,
So
and I know we went way over time, but you're totally fine. And I agree. As a state delegate myself, I see all these issues, not just as a candidate, but also as a state delegate in my own right, in my own district. So, well, let's kick this off. And I know you kind of hit on a lot of all these subjects, but
yeah.
we got one right here for you. First question is, what made you run in the first place, and what specific reasons do you want to really go against Blake Moore? Like, can you get down to the nitty gritty of why you actually wanted to run, seeing after Andrew Badger what happened to him in 22? I'll let you take the floor.
Yeah, and I think what happened to Andrew Badger. Andrew Badger had an awesome message, and I loved Andrew Badger. I voted for Andrew Badger, and reasons why I was running against Blake Moore was because I feel like he participates a little bit in the climate change agenda, and I knew about his votes with the January 6th committee and Liz Cheney, and I knew about his insider trading with Raytheon that happened in 2021. And so these were all things that I was against. This is the kind of crap that we need to get out of Washington. And while I was running, that's when I found out he was getting paid for his vote. That's when I found out that he even signed. I didn't know this until a few months ago, that he signed a resolution to censure and condemn President Trump. And so, as time goes on, especially in this election, in this race, his votes are getting more and more liberal. He's, like, the evidence of someone to run against him, and the evidence that we need change from Blake Moore is more evident now than it's ever been before. And so, I think the outcome might be a little different for Andrew Badger if he would have ran this time, because the evidence does keep piling up, and we do see how bad Blake Moore is getting with his votes. And so, I think the frustrating part is that Democrats vote in our elections, especially our primary elections, and so that was that could have had a key role in the primary election, because Andrew Badger killed it in convention. He was only 6 votes away from getting 60% of the vote, which is phenomenal. And so, like, the Republican base in Utah was definitely behind him. It was the moderates and the Democrats that kind of messed it up for him in the primary. Oh, you're muted. Oh,
Sorry
there.
about that. So you mentioned insider trading and how Blake Moore has stocks and trades and stuff with that, especially with the insider details inside those trades. What is your resolution or path to make sure that insider trading does not happen anymore inside DC?
Well, you know what? We need to take the Stock Act of 2012 even further. So like I was saying, I think we need to ban stock trading, period, for Congress, because you know a lot of these politicians, uh, they get in trouble, and it gets them in trouble in elections and stuff, and so they go to a blind trust, right? So, but yet there's still their stock portfolios make great return on investment percentages. And so, like John Curtis has a blind trust, I think, right now. And I don't know how well it's grown while he's had a blind trust, but he's at like 46% a return on investment percentage. So he's one of the top people in Congress as far as stock trades go. And Blake Moore's not far behind him at 36%. So,
So you just mentioned John Curtis, and before we head on to the second question, everybody is going to ask you, and everybody wants to know who you going for the governor, who you going for the U.S. Senate, U.S. And state auditor, so forth. Who's your picks?
so as far as governor goes, and that's the thing, and I guess you can call this an endorsement, but so for governor, I would definitely say Phil Lyman. Phil Lyman is a phenomenal candidate. He is very down to earth. Every time I've met him at the meet the candidate events and talked to him, he has answered every question. He had no issue with giving me his phone number or anything. He was always willing to help. And like, and I love his stance. Like, he's kind of a hard right candidate. So, anyways, but I love Phil Lyman, and there's some other candidates that are great too. I just know that Cox is not the answer. We need to get Cox out now. And and so as far as U.S. Senate goes, I'm really pulling for Trent Staggs and Carolyn Fippen probably.
Okay,
So
okay,
um, so and like both both of them aren't perfect, but like you can there's no such thing as the perfect candidate. And so that's who I would say as far as Senate. Um, and then let's see, what are the others? Oh, you said state auditor. So state auditor, I want Tina Cannon. I think she would do well as a state auditor. I have some concerns about Ricky Hatch. I know there's some people here in Weber County that have asked for some election integrity items from him, and so they've requested that officially, and Ricky Hatch doesn't get back with them, and so what they wanted was to for him to show the percentage of the votes per precinct, right? And they wanted to
yep.
see it from like 2020 to 2022, and 2018. So that way we could see, where the discrepancies are, and if there was fraudulent voting in one or the other, because like if there's fraud, like you're going to see it at the precinct level. And he like I don't want to say he refuses, but he hasn't been very willing to give up that information. And I actually just got I was involved in a text message this morning that Blake Moore has actually donated to Ricky Hatch's campaign. And so, and Ricky Hatch is the guy that runs the elections in Weber County right now. And so that's kind of concerning, with, my opponent and him. Um, but anyways, what, yeah, what other races
So
were you?
what about Utah Attorney General?
Utah Attorney General. This one's going to be hard. Anybody but Derek Brown. Um, but
I like Derek. I personally like Derek. I mean, not as
I
probably like as a candidate, but I love him as a person. I've talked to him several times, just one on one. As a human being, I love him to death.
Yeah, and he has that Mike Lee endorsement, so that hits really hard in Utah. But Spencer Cox, like what's Spencer Cox's brother-in-law's name that's in the legislature? But anyways, his brother-in-law suggested to him that he appoint the attorney general position instead of it being an elected position. And so, luckily, this didn't gain any traction. And so, but Derek Brown was who he was going to appoint, and he actually strong armed. There's a an article in the Post Millennial about this. So he actually strong armed Sean Reyes to endorse Derek Brown and to take Derek Brown to the Republican Attorney Generals Association, and they were meeting in Tallahassee, Florida. And so there a whistleblower came out about this, about uh, Cox strong arming Sean Reyes into getting him endorsed at this meeting, which was on March 5th, our caucus night. And so
Yep.
uh, there was actually some attorney generals there from other states that saw this article, and it and they were seeing it all play out, play by play. And so instead of endorsing Derek Brown, they said, no, we're not going to do this. If this is a setup, then no, we're not going to do it. And so, anyway, so that's why I don't like Derek Brown. I don't want, and Deidre Henderson is on his financial committee, or not financial committee, but his campaign finances. The people that help with that. Our own lieutenant governor that is over elections in Utah. And I don't think that's right. And so, when you get people that are well connected like that and start tying into each other's campaigns, that tells me something, and that raises red flags. And so that's why I'm really against Derek Brown. And he's a lobbyist. He hasn't really done a lot of attorney work. And so I would probably say, um, who's the Mylar guy? Frank Mylar.
Oh, Frank. Yep.
Yeah. So I would probably say him. He seems like the most organic, and has a lot of experience. And so I would go with him, is who my vote would be.
Okay. Good. And also, you mentioned Tina Cannon because she ran for the same seat you are 2 years ago as well.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she's run for a couple offices. So
Yes, she has. So our next question here,
yeah.
and this is going to be, I believe it's a one part. So,
Okay.
what are your plans if nominated and elected, like committees, caucuses, and bill proposals, would you want to do during your first 2 years or your first term?
So as far as caucuses go, I would definitely want the Freedom Caucus. That's the number one caucus I would join. As far as all the other ones, I'm not too privy on them. But I, yeah, I think a lot of them are, like the bipartisan, uniparty caucuses, and I want to stay away from that. As far as committees go, I would want to join almost any committee except for the Judiciary Committee, because I'm not a lawyer, and so that would be a huge learning curve, uh, substantial learning curve if I went to that one. But the committees that I would probably want is the ethics committee, because I think we need people in that committee to hold people accountable, because Washington is definitely not accountable right now. And so I was going to say the chairman for that committee actually participates in insider trading also. So
Of
it's
course he does. Of
yeah.
course he does.
So it gets really difficult. But and then either appropriations or yeah, I'd probably say appropriations, because but appropriations is a huge committee. Like uh
Yes.
like, yeah, you need to have some tenure to get on the appropriations committee. But Um,
Because anything that comes out of the Appropriations Committee has to go through the CBO or the Congressional Budget Office before it actually is inserted into a bill or redone and sent back and redone as far as legislation for congressional budget limitations.
Yeah, and it has a huge amount of power. Like appropriations gets to investigate all sorts of agencies and bureaus in the government, and so it's not taken lightly if you're on appropriations. And so they want the right people on there. Um, and so, and then as far as bills go, a bill that I would want and I would hope to sponsor is one that reforms Wall Street. So I want to combat ESG and BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard and stuff. And so I want to prohibit these private equity firms that take everybody's money and bring it all in and then invest it somewhere and then sit on the board of the board of directors on these companies, and they dictate what policies these companies have, and so I think that's wrong. Like if you're taking everybody else's money and you're using that money to push your influence everywhere, that's wrong. And so it wouldn't prohibit individuals, like I'll use Elon Musk because this was a recent example. So Elon Musk using his own money to invest so much money so that way he has a stakehold in a company that he has a board position. That's okay because he's investing his own money and not taking everybody else's. And so that's one bill that I would want to sponsor and push, and then hopefully that combats ESG a little bit.
So you said ESG, and I know Marlo Oaks, who is our treasurer, I believe he's the treasurer, right? No.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
So anyway, I know Marlo's forefronting the efforts to reverse ESG and stop SCS, which is the social credit score, and I applaud him for that effort. And so
Yeah.
hopefully with you
Treasurer.
guys and me and him, treasurer, yep. And so hopefully all of us combined can kick back the ESG out of federal and state governments. I know Marlo's done a fantastic job here on the Utah front. But let's move on to our next question, and
Okay.
that is, what are your thoughts and feelings on Speaker Mike Johnson, and would you join the movement to vacate the chair or select a new speaker when elected in 25?
Yeah, this is a very controversial topic right now. Um, so what are my thoughts on Mike Johnson? When Mike Johnson was elected to Speaker of the House, I was actually a huge fan of him. Um, I thought he was gonna be the answer, to be honest. And so I was excited when he got in, and when he got in, he did an okay job, and for the first couple months maybe, and then he just flipped like a switch, and he and right now it's honestly difficult to know if you would get the exact same outcomes from a Democrat Speaker of the House. And so and so that ties in with the vacating the chair right now. And so like I hate, like, vacating the chair is a very burdensome process, right? It weighs heavy on everybody in Congress. They all get sick of the voting. They just want to do their job, um, or
But
invest.
we see what Matt Gaetz did with the last speaker and his ousting, and then now we got Marjorie Taylor Greene trying to say, "Hey, look, we need to vacate the chair because Speaker Mike Johnson went against the new FISA and supported parts of the NDAA and stuff like that." So she's willing to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. And
Yeah,
so would you be okay with maybe reelecting a new speaker? Because right now, with the House majority being very, very, very slim, and Hakeem Jeffries is one vote away from basically getting there,
yeah,
does that scare you a little bit? Is letting possibly a Democrat taking over?
yeah, and it does. and I was going to address that, like, you know like, either either way you sit on this issue as far as vacating or not vacating right now, I think is possibly the right answer, because you know who knows, like, right now Mike Johnson is very compromised, very, and he is pushing almost everything Biden wants and everything Chuck Schumer wants. And so, would it be any different if a Democrat was in office? We don't know, but we do get ranking member positions on committees, so that's very important. And so we do need to maintain that majority and leadership in the House. And so, I think right now is not the time to vacate. I would be against it right now, and I 100% agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene's principles on why she wants to do it. Like, and I totally agree with her. Like, he's gone against all of his promises, and like and so it's very frustrating right now. But I think we just need to sit on our hands on this one and wait it out. Even as bad as it is, it's not a good situation.
Okay, so I'm going to pivot just a little bit, just for a split second, in the question four. And this has been a big deal in the last week, especially when the FISA 702
Yeah.
stuff is going on. What are your thoughts when it comes to the 702 FISA warrants and the NDAA, which gives these federal bureaucracies or alphabet agencies the power to do no knock, limitless warrants? And they would basically target us conservatives. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and they have, and so, and I know Blake's voted in favor of the FISA extension with the NDAA back last fall, and he's also voted against the Biggs Amendment, which required a warrant on the front end of of a of a FISA surveillance. And so, like, do we have a Fourth Amendment or don't we have a Fourth Amendment? And so, and then he voted for the final product of FISA. And so all of the amendments got shot down, I think, in for the main bill. But anyways, I right now I hate the FBI, I hate the CIA, I hate our federal government. Like, they
Amen.
all are abusing their power, like, overwhelmingly, like, abusing their power. And so, um, this is a foreign intelligence surveillance act. Foreign. So why is it even spying on Americans in the first place when it's supposed to be directed towards foreigners? And so, um, so why wouldn't you have a warrant? And so, I I'm against FISA. If there was a warrant requirement in there for Americans, I would be more in favor of it, because I know we do have national security risks, especially with a wide open border right now that Biden has. And so, but that's the thing. As soon as you give up your rights and freedoms to the government, they're never going to give them back to you.
Well, the thing is, we haven't gave up our Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights. Even Mike Lee has came out, the senator from Utah, which is our senator, has come out and said that, hey, these are unconstitutional. You cannot sit here and pass legislation that overthrows individual liberty when it comes to the Fourth and Fifth Amendment, especially with illegal search and seizure.
Yeah,
So these
yeah,
things, to me, are very unconstitutional, and I guess you agree.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like, and I don't think right now is the time that we need to be rewarding the FBI with anything. And so, another thing, that came out that ties into this is there was a bill called, um, the Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act. And I found this out today, actually, and Blake Moore voted against it. And what this does is it prohibits law enforcement and federal agencies to circumvent the Fourth Amendment and purchase cell phone data from brokers. So these law enforcement agencies are buying the cell phone data, tracking your location, and other things from your phone, and that way they don't have to get a search warrant. They already know where you're at. And so, and I think that is definitely a violation of your Fourth Amendment right.
Oh, it completely is. And thing is, what are you planning to do to help stop that if elected? Because this is a very serious issue. It says we're supposed to go after foreign intelligence, but now it's become domestic intelligence, which is
Yeah.
a violation of a lot of things, especially the First Amendment. Because now, if you say something to the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, if they don't like it, they flag you. They flag your accounts. They get into your social media. They get into your cell phone records, and then they come after you in any way, shape, or form. They can levy on your house through the judicial courts. They can sit here and put warrants for your arrest from impeding speech. There's a plethora of things that can be totally illegal. And so, what is your act that you would love to make as far as legislation to stop this dead in its tracks?
So the main thing is to vote no on these bills, or well, to vote in favor of these bills that protect our citizens. And so, like, we need to vote for the Fourth Amendment is not for sale act, and we need to be voting against FISA and its abusive processes. And so we need to revert back to what our country was before we had all of this government overreach. And so I don't know that there's a lot that I can do unless I was on oversight. Um, I think the House Oversight Committee would be the best chance at getting any sort of accountability as far as the federal law enforcement agencies and stuff. Oh, you're muted. Yeah,
I
you're good.
hate this microphone. Anyway, but when it comes down to like some of these agencies, and we're talking about the VA, I'm switching gears a little bit. This has been a very hot topic across all four districts here in Utah, especially the U.S. Senate race when it comes to the VA, Veterans Affairs, homeless veterans. So the question I have for you is, and you see on the screen here is what legislation are you going to pass that helps return veterans that have fought for this country and also tackle the vet homeless crisis, especially plus the VA? Because we go to downtown Salt Lake and we go to the Rio Grande district, right behind the Delta Center, and we see all these homeless veterans there. They have fallen into substance abuse and narcotics and alcoholism and just the mental depravity from PTSD. What are your specific plans to kind of help tackle that so we don't have our returned soldiers going into the trenches of this depressive state anymore?
Yeah, and I know that this is a huge issue in the current session. I There's several bills that are being pushed right now, and I haven't brushed up really heavily on this topic, to be honest. And but like we have a mental health crisis, and we need to get the help that especially our veterans need, for their mental health. They see a lot of horrific things. So the military and our police see a lot of horrific things, and and they're just expected to go on and pretend like everything's normal afterwards, and it's hard. And so we do need to support our veterans. Those people that are willing to put their life on the line for you and me and everybody else. And so yeah, it's one of the things that we need to continue to support is our veterans, and getting them the help that they need. And we need to reform. We need to let those veterans go to not only the VA but to other hospitals as well, so that way they can, if there's somebody that's better for that provides better care, that they can go to them too.
So, would you be in favor of maybe them going to a substance abuse center and getting some rehabilitation or some VA assistance when it comes to PTSD, especially in really cold winter months when they hear cars backfiring or they have triggers inside their mentality that just push them over the edge? Would you support an act that would help these individuals regain full function back into society.
Yeah, yeah, I would. Um, like a lot of people that are homeless with mental health issues self medicate, and alcohol and substance abuse is how they medicate through those things, and and it's a long battle. It's never easy, and I don't envy their position at all, and so we do need a lot of resources for them to help them along with in that path. So yeah, and especially in the winter months.
So now that we can tackle that, now we're going to switch a little bit to the 2024 election with President Trump. And we've seen him, in fact, today. He's going through more court cases. He had to miss his son Barron's high school graduation because the courts gummed him up again. And so I guess this question would be right here on the screen that goes, thoughts on President Trump and your personal thoughts, not just as a man or the president or policies, but we'll get into that, but also about his court cases and his potential with Biden for the 2024 reelection.
So my thoughts on Trump. So I will be totally transparent and honest. 2006. So in 2015, I was a Trump fan, and then when he decided he was going to run for president, I had a little bit of concerns, and I actually voted for Evan McMullen. I don't like to admit it, but I think I need to be transparent about that. And luckily, Utah voted for Trump, so which I kind of expected. And then when Trump was put into office in his first 100 days, he converted me. I have been on the pro Trump bandwagon ever since, and you know, like there hasn't been any other president in modern history that has actually fulfilled almost every single one of their campaign promises in their first 100 days. So he did everything except for three things, which was build the border wall, repeal Obamacare, and lower taxes for the middle class. And John McCain messed up the Obamacare. The wall came later, and taxes came later. But those, we need to make sure that, especially when we change the tax code and stuff, that we get it right and we take the time that it needs. But yeah, I think he's a great candidate. I've supported him ever since then, and I've regretted my decision for Evan McMullen, especially when he ran against Mike Lee. Like that guy is a clown, and it
Yeah,
sucks.
what he was doing, I don't think anybody in Utah actually liked that at all.
Yeah,
And
like
so,
yeah.
well, here's the thing. I kind of feel bad for that Democrat who was running, Kale Wilson or
Oh,
something
that
like that.
yeah. They
And so they
decided
got to
to
the
make him skip.
convention and they kind of threw him straight under the bus. And then Mike Lee was just going to go to town and beat them anyway. But
Yeah.
when it comes to Trump with the court cases, we
Oh,
see everybody from Letitia James up in New York with Judge Edgerton or whatever his name is. And then we see down in Georgia how they're trying to actively
yeah.
try and
Kavanaugh.
keep him off the ballot.
Yeah, and every single one of these cases is all a sham. It's all election interference, all of them. And like the one with Letitia James in New York. What other you know businessmen or business owners have they prosecuted as far as uh, you know businessmen inflating the values of their property? And so, um, like, isn't that what appraisers are for? Is to appraise the value of your properties before you get loans. And so, and like, and they that they shopped for that judge, and
Oh, of course they did.
and they knew how much cash Trump had on hand, which was right about $400 million. And so, if they got over that 400 million mark, they knew that they could take Trump Tower and really hand it to Trump. And so, everything's a sham. With the Alvin Bragg case, that like he couldn't even tell you the charges that were going to be that they were going to charge him with. They didn't know. And it's the same with the Fannie Willis stuff. And then it's hilarious that you get the Fannie Willis um, corruption stuff where she's using the money with Nathan Wade, and
Yep.
so but yeah, these are all they're all shams. They're desperate to try and get something to stick, and and it energizes the Democrat base every time.
So
And
this year on March 5th, we had a presidential preference poll, which kind of derailed the whole caucus convention system as far as delegates and stuff like that. Do you
yeah.
think what happened nationally was a signal to us here at the GOP in the state of Utah?
Oh, well, so what do you mean by that? Like,
Because we had to go through Colorado. Colorado got flipped, and then there was another state, and another state got flipped. Do you think that maybe the precursor of those states was why we started to go towards a preferential poll instead of just an actual presidential
oh,
vote?
no, well, yeah, I think the move was so that way we could stay relevant. And so, because since our primary was so far into the presidential season, like our primary is in June. So by then, everybody already knows the presidential nominee is. Everybody else has dropped out. So there's usually, one, maybe two candidates left. And so our our votes don't really matter, and we'll never get a presidential nominee to come and campaign in Utah if we don't have uh, that primary vote sooner. And so I think that's why they included it on caucus night. And so, but I saw all over people reporting in Salt Lake County that all of the Democrats were at the Republican caucuses, and so which infuriates me.
Yeah, and I saw that all up and down the Wasatch Front as well. But there was a low turnout, and we can't help that, but we can only help going forward. But I guess the next question is, and this is actually a pretty good one, as I got this from an email earlier. And it says, what are your big issues with delegates and constituents in CD1? What are like some
Um,
of the big issues that the constituents and delegates are like, hey, I need you to press on this issue, that issue, and this issue over here?
they a lot of them don't give me um, a lot of push as far as where to go. I feel like the debt really resonates with them, though. They usually ask a lot of questions with that. They do ask about the Russia-Ukraine war in Israel. Um, but all three of us in the Republican race all have the same stance on the southern border, so we don't really get a lot of questions about that. Um, yeah, I would probably say the debt because that's where the biggest difference between me and Blake is.
So you said the Ukraine, Russia, and Israel, Palestine.
Yeah.
What is your take to that, really quick? I know it's not one of the questions, but what's your take on that? Because that is a hot topic issue right now.
Oh yeah, it is. So the three bills that they just passed, as far as Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. So as far as Ukraine, no, I'm not going to vote for that. Israel, I would say no. I want to say yes. And if it was if it was a lot more limited in scope, I would vote yes for it. Like, namely, uh, if the main purpose was to uh, resupply the Iron Dome and Iron Beam, then yes, I'm for that. I think the Iron Dome is a phenomenal tool that Israel has, and it stops a lot more progression as far as war goes than anything else. And so, but in that Israel bill, they had a lot of humanitarian aid for Gaza. They had a lot of stuff that shouldn't have been in there. So the Israel one, I would have voted no. And then the Taiwan one, I probably would have voted yes for because it helped with a lot of infrastructure, and I feel like it didn't have well, it didn't seem like it had as much money laundering in it as the other ones did. So, and I think, and Ukraine is all about money laundering right now.
Same for myself. No offense to Israel or Palestine or Ukraine or Russia.
Yeah,
I personally would have voted no for any of the bills because I see people along Salt Lake City all the time that need our assistance. I see people in New York, Chicago, LA, Atlanta, Denver. I see all these other areas, and especially rural Utah and rural America, and even the suburbs with construction and permits and stuff like that. That money needs to be here first, and that's just my take. We need to put us and ours first, not
yeah.
second, third, or last.
Yeah, and yeah, and that's the big thing. Like we always need to remember that our debt can't really handle a lot more extra strain. Like we need to act now on our debt. Like our debt is gonna bankrupt us, and so like we really can't be handing out money left and right like we have been for the past 30 years. And so um, and so we do need that. And so the only thing with the Taiwan thing is that um, we do need, like, I'm not against military spending, so we just need to eliminate the waste and fraud in the military spending bills. So like
So yeah,
when
I'm okay with helping Taiwan because they help produce semiconductors
yeah
and components for our cell phones, for our devices, and for our technology and upgrades. So I understand the relationship between the U.S. and Taiwan as far as that, and also the threat from China that wants to invade Taiwan. I understand that as well, and so do you.
yeah
But
yeah
we can't just keep sitting here handing a blank check to these guys any longer.
yep. Yeah, and yeah, so Taiwan's very important geographically for us, and it's very important as far as those semiconductors go because it's not only for our computers, it's also for all of those missiles that we're firing. So if we go to war and we lose our semiconductor production, then we're screwed because like we can't build any of those as many smart bombs anymore or smart missiles, you know, and so that severely limits us as far as our protection and attacking power. And I know that there's I think it's the Chips Act, but it's to bring computer chips manufacturing home. And I actually have some family that are involved in that. Well, not involved in that. They work for the general contracting company that got the contract for Arizona. They're just a
Oh,
project
good.
manager for them. And so they were talking about it um, and how big of a project it's going to be, which is good because and that's what's important is because we do need to bring our computer chips back. And if COVID taught us one thing, we need to bring our pharmaceutical ingredients to America and produce them here in America. Like I feel like we learned nothing from COVID, from all of that big disaster, you know.
Correct. So one question that I have got up and down the state because I live here in rural Utah, you live in suburban Utah up in Weber County, correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. South Ogden.
And and then we have Salt Lake City in the metro area from Ogden all the way down to pretty much Payson. They would consider that the urban, even though it's suburban and urban.
Yeah.
But one constituent asked me this in one of my debates, and I'm going to ask you the same question: is how can you bridge the gap between rural, urban, and suburban Utahns in your district that feel misrepresented by the incumbent?
Um, I don't know how they feel misrepresented by the incumbent, but my wife is actually from Nephi, Utah. So my wife grew up in rural Utah, and I grew up in Layton. So I grew up in suburban Utah, and it's the urban that I probably struggle with, because I've never lived in Salt Lake City, if you want to call that urban compared to some other parts of the nation. Um, and so, but I do work in Salt Lake nearly every day of the year, so I do get a little bit of that urban effect. So I don't know as far as how Blake Moore misrepresents them, but I, the first thing that pops up to me is this fight with climate change and getting rid of fossil fuels for the rural area, which, if in case you didn't know, all of fertilizers, herbicides, fungicides, and all of that kind of stuff all derives from fossil fuels. So, and our farmers need diesel fuel, so getting rid of fossil fuels is going to decimate our farming industry.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And when Biden signed the executive order to make sure that he went down that path to eliminate those carbon emission fuels that we see, it really took a devastating effect, especially on our coal, our gas, our natural gas, our pipelines, everything. It was just decimated all in one big old swoop of a pen.
yeah.
And so we need to make sure that we get him out of there, reverse those executive orders, and get Trump in there who wants to restore the XL Keystone pipeline, restore some of the permits that were here in Utah, and restore our energy independence. So that's one thing that I'm hoping that President Trump will do within his first couple of days in office.
Oh, he will for sure. Yeah, and oh man. Oh, and I was gonna say, yeah, all of those policies, getting the pipeline, energy independence, all of that, that helps lower our carbon emissions. So you would think all of the climate cultists would want that because it actually helps our environment instead of hurts it. And so, but they only follow what the mainstream media tells them to. So
Well, of course they do. I mean, you look at people like Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, or AOC as we call her,
yeah,
and the squad members. They have no idea how carbon works. We're carbon. The clothes
oh
on
yeah,
us are made from carbon. Everything around us is made from carbon. We are a carbon society, and so
yeah,
you can't just eliminate it because carbon has to be, made from other types of carbon. And now we got carbon capture technology, which can make graphene and so on and so forth. But
yeah.
that's a whole topic for a whole different
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah. I was gonna say I could go on for days about climate change.
Yep, same here. So a little bit of a softball question, and I want to know your thoughts because this happened recently in the last week and a half. Is the new National Hockey League coming to Salt Lake City? What are your thoughts on the NHL and Ryan Smith bringing the Arizona Coyotes to Utah and Salt Lake City?
So we're excited. Me and my wife are excited. So we're actually hockey people in our family. So we were really hoping that the NHL came. Um, it's a little bittersweet with the Arizona Coyotes because they haven't been doing too hot. And so we were hoping for an expansion team. You get a little bit better of a team as far as that goes with an expansion team. But we're really excited, and as far as where our state legislator has been, funding these $1 billion loans for the baseball stadium and the NHL stadium. I'm very against those. Those shouldn't happen. And there's actually a website that does a really good job about informing people about these public-private partnerships as far as sports stadiums go, and it's www.fieldofschemes.com. And so what what happens a lot of the time with these public-private partnerships with stadiums is they go and they ask the state for money for this stadiums. So the $1 billion for the NHL stadium, right? And after a certain amount of time, they go and ask for more money, for more renovations, for a new stadium, whatever it might be. And if the state tells them no or gives them a hard time, then they're like, oh, well, we might have to move the team because we need these renovations and we need this new stadium. And so they use that as leverage. And so if they do move the team, sometimes the loan doesn't get paid off. And when you have $1 billion team, how can you not like afford $1 billion stadium with that? Especially when you're the recipient of that. And so,
Well, a
like,
lot of these owners don't want to take their profits and reallocate that into their own business because player
yeah,
salaries are already enormous, and so
yeah,
is staffing and so on and so forth. But I've seen the renderings for the new Jazz Stadium, which is a renovation of the whole downtown metro area, pretty much. And
mhm,
so I don't know if the Utah taxpayers are going to go along with this because the Jazz owner, Ryan Smith, he's worth $2 billion. You got Gail Smith, who when she sold the Utah Jazz, with her late husband Larry Miller, she got $2 billion. So the assets are there for them to have a private entity and private acquisitions for these things without using tax funding from the taxpayers. So I think it's I mean, obviously, it's not a long shot anymore. It's going to happen. The Arizona
yeah,
Cardinals are on their way here to Utah, so and that's just sad
yeah,
what the state legislature did this past session. But moving on to our last question is what will you do to help solve the crippling inflation and also protect the freedom of speech from the online form, especially with President Trump's Digital Bill of Rights Act?
yeah, which I would definitely be in favor of. And that's the thing, like, it's funny. It's funny when Blake Moore talks about inflation and how he's combating inflation, and then he votes for all of these spending bills that increase inflation. And so the inflation is, yeah, we gotta stop the printing money, and we got to control our deficit and control our government spending. And we also need to have that energy independence so that way we can, like, all of those transportation costs get passed on to the consumer. So all of our goods cost more, the more gas prices are. And so we need to lower our gas prices as much as we can. We need that cheap, reliable fuel. Um, Another thing that gets passed on to the consumer is taxes. So it's like every time you raise taxes, like the end result, it's exponentially more, in the final consumption of that tax, right?
Right.
Because the final consumed good is receives all of the taxes along the chain of production. And so yeah, there's a lot of things that we got to protect ourselves from. And what was the second part of that question? Oh, freedom of speech.
Freedom of
Um,
speech with the Digital Bill of Rights Act.
yeah, and uh, and I forget the specifics of the digital bill of rights, but I know that it was definitely what we need. We also need the parental bill of rights to help protect parents and their choices. But um, you know, I get flack about this online. That we need to maybe look at reforms to Section 230 and the protections that Facebook and all of them enjoy. And so, and there's been some monumental cases with the Supreme Court lately, and freedom of speech. And so that's the thing. And that's what I love. Like, I see you on Twitter, and I love Twitter now. I used to be a Facebook guy, and now I'm on Twitter mainly. And I love what Elon Musk has done for that, and he's taken a huge stance, and I love it. He's, if it's not a crime, I don't care what you say. And that's how it should be. That's how Facebook should be. We shouldn't be about censoring everybody and trying to manipulate speech and manipulate the narrative. And so, yeah, we got to be very careful with freedom of speech. So,
No, absolutely. And when it comes down to the Digital Bill of Rights, it's also not just about the tech sector. It's also about just, it goes back to the Section 702. It goes back to the FISA warrants. It goes back to the FBI intrusion. And it goes back to all these things when it comes to the Fourth Amendment. So that was a really big thing when President Trump said, hey, we're going to pass this Digital Bill of Rights, make sure that everyday citizens can have freedom of speech across the board without interruption and without being overshadowed by big shadow government like the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, and so on and so forth. And so I think that was a very big deal. So hopefully we can get that passed. Anyway, Paul Miller, I'm going to give you closing arguments. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. Make your best case to the state delegates for this Saturday to put you at that 60% mark so that you can just be the nominee and not have to worry about much, except for Blake Moore did gather signatures. He did take the dual path, and so he did collect 7,000, which will, if you get the nominee or the nomination, it will go to basically a vote on June 25th, 2024. And so let's do it. Let's hear your best 3 minute pitch to the state delegates and the constituents.
So I don't know that I need 3 minutes because my introduction I talked a lot about what I'm about and a lot about my message, and that's actually going to be a similar message to what I'm going to give at convention. I would say this race is critically important, and it is critically important that we change out our congressional delegation in the first district, because Blake Moore represents and participates with everything that we need to get rid of in DC. And he doesn't represent his base. He doesn't represent his constituents and what we want. And this race is about principle, and being about principles. And I don't think you can say that you're for principles and for or against the left's agenda when you turn around and fund that very same agenda. And I don't think you can say you're for principles and for reducing the deficit when you vote in the exact opposite way. And so that's the main thing that people need to realize, and that's what's going to be on the ballot is principles and integrity. And so I would very much appreciate your vote and your support. Like I said before, my website is www.pm4utah.com, FOR, sorry. And you can learn all about me there. And why I'm running against Blake Moore.
All right, perfect. But I'm going to hold you on one more thing really quick.
Okay.
Top 5 things that you want to accomplish. Go.
I want to accomplish. Man, this is a hard one. You should have gave me a heads up on this. So I want to get in there, do my job, and come home. I'm not in there to enrich myself. I want to be there and be a beacon of integrity and honesty. I want to hold the government accountable, and I want to hold other members in Congress accountable. I hate, one of the things I hate most about politicians is the lies that they tell. They always say that they're for one thing, but their votes tell you something else, or once they get in, they change their mind. And man, 5. I don't know that I can come up with 5, but I am huge. I'm huge on accountability in DC right now. I'm huge on changing the state of our debt and our debt culture. Securing the southern border. We really need to secure the southern border, and we really need to fight against all of the woke agenda and the climate change, which, climate change, there's huge monumental changes that need to happen because there's tons of funding in climate change right now, and so we need to get all of that out of our budget.
All right, perfect. Paul Miller from Utah's 1st Congressional District. Thank you so much for having us on today, and let's get you through the convention. Let's get you to that nomination period. Let's get you that 60%. Paul Miller, thank you for coming on Raw Real Politics and Beyond the Podium podcast. Appreciate it very much. Yeah. And this Saturday will be the state convention up in the Salt Palace in Salt Lake City, Utah, for all the state delegates to attend. I hope to see all you guys there. I am running for your RNC committeeman, and that was Paul Miller for running for Utah's 1st Congressional District. Anyway, we're at the end of the show. We're at the end of the hour. God bless you, and we will see you later. Take care, and good night.